Hello, I think we can start now. Sino, the floor is yours. Thank you.
So a very good morning to Dr. Vannarith, President of the Asian Vision Institute, and greeting to all participants who are joining us through Zoom, as well as ladies and gentlemen who are here with us today via the Facebook Live. Welcome to our first ever special dialogue or special conversation, which is co-organized by the Young Seekers Cambodia chapter and the Asian Vision Institute. And it is our great honor and privilege to have Dr. Vannarith here with us today. And before kicking start with the dialogue, my name is Kong Sri Nu, a research co-lead at the Young Seekers Cambodia chapter, and I will be moderating this session. And in today's discussion, we will touch upon the Cambodia's foreign policy in the changing regional political power. And I believe that this is a very interesting topic to discuss, especially among the IELTS scholars and IELTS students who would like to learn and obtain some knowledge on that matter. And it is also important to note that the discussion will last for 1 hour, and there will be another 30 minutes for the Q&A session. And therefore, the participants can feel free to drop any questions along the way through our chat box if there is any, and I will deliver the question to our panelists accordingly. So once again, good morning, Dr. Vannarith. And since today we will be discussing mostly on the foreign policy and the regional political power, would you mind sharing with us about your perspective on the current geopolitics of major power in Southeast Asia as a whole?
Thank you very much, Ms. Kong Sri Nu and the Young Seekers Cambodia chapter for organizing this conversation. So conversation means we have an interactive dialogue conversation, not a presentation. As you said, we are entering a very dangerous kind of a phase of human history, especially since the end of World War II. We are kind of experimenting multiple complex crises. So some may call it as a perfect storm, or some may call it a confluence of calamities, right? And those crises include, of course, the pandemic COVID-19, the war in Ukraine, food security crisis, high inflation almost everywhere. This kind of disruption to global supply chains, such as food, energy, products, and technology competition and war. Well, it lasted since the Donald Trump time, tech and trade war with China, but I think these trends have been exacerbated by the COVID and also the sharpening geopolitical competition between major powers. And of course, the most existential threat to our human beings or Homo sapiens is climate change, right? Climate emergency or climate crisis. And now our attention is quite deviated from this existential threat, which is climate change. So very unfortunate for human beings, for our planet, that we do not pay enough attention to this threat, which is climate change and environmental degradation and so on. So within this context, Southeast Asian region have somehow become a theater for geopolitical competition, and also can become potentially a space for dialogue and solutions. ASEAN has been in existence for 55 years, and it went through up and downs, you know. It faced several challenges in the past, especially during the Cold War. So the ASEAN can once again become a driving force of regional dialogue, peace, stability, and use it as a platform to build mutual understanding between all these major powers. So an ASEAN summit is coming next month, so I hope that ASEAN can facilitate dialogues and can promote mutual understanding with the hope that we can stabilize or de-escalate tension between major powers.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Vannarith. So to be honest, I went to the climate change summit early this week as well, and it was hosted by the USAID, and I can see that they really focus so much on the climate change on the West and so on and so forth. So you also mentioned that it can also be a room for major power to cooperate rather than competing with each other within the region itself. So far, what are those practices? What are the practices that can call out both the major powers to cooperate, to have a dialogue rather than competing with one another?
They need to understand that climate change is a global issue, emerging threat to humanity, and they need to prioritize this in their foreign policy and international cooperations. And they also need to put efforts and resources in helping, let's say, developing and least developed economies to mitigate as well as to adapt to climate change. Without developing countries do not have much resources and capacity to do so. And the Cambodia, as a chair of ASEAN this year, have proposed establishing ASEAN Green Deal, which will be an important platform and mechanism on knowledge sharing, resource mobilization, and practical operations on green economy and also this climate change adaptation and mitigations. So we have many tools and policy. We don't lack of those tools and policy at the global regional level, but the problem is the political will to implement those policies and the resources to realize those policies. So this is very important, political will and resources. So we need to do more actually to address climate change.
Yes, Dr. Vannarith. And with the mentioned issues like multiple complex crises, the pandemic, the food security, and so on and so forth. So if we look back to Cambodia, how would those crises, how would those problems affect Cambodia as a whole?
Well, Cambodia, since its opening up and international integration since early 1990s, Cambodia has been part of the region and also part of the world. So it's quite connected to the region and the world because it's a small and open economy. Cambodia cannot, how to say, stay alone or cannot isolate itself because our survival, our interests are very much interconnected with the regional environment and international environment. So Cambodia has been very active in promoting open, inclusive multilateralism and rule-based international order. Against international law is the first and the last weapon of small state. So Cambodia has been consistent in promoting this rule-based international order. Whenever we have a border dispute with our neighbors, Cambodia always look for diplomatic and legal solutions to the problem. Not force, but diplomatic and legal solutions. So that is kind of a foreign policy objective and interest of Cambodia. So now Cambodia is experiencing this kind of a turbulence, not yet a roller coaster yet, but have turbulence, challenges caused by global and regional transformation and uncertainty of volatilities. So look at the pandemic. Of course, we have seen the impact of the pandemic on the livelihoods of the Cambodian people. We are not off the wood yet, actually. We're still dealing with the COVID. We're still dealing with this post-COVID socio-economic recovery. And now it's compounded by the war in Ukraine, food and energy crisis, and also the disruption to the global supply chain. And this kind of pressures on small state to choose sides. Because Cambodia, similar to or like other countries, is not interested in taking sides because we, as a small state, we wish to embrace everyone. We want to be a place that that can welcome and connect with everyone, because we cannot avoid choosing sides, because in the past we experienced our big mistake of taking sides. So it's not easy to embrace everyone. It's not easy. Through strategic hedging, we need a lot of diplomatic capacities, visions, and resources to do so. Hopefully, Cambodia can navigate these turbulence challenges and look at the economic development in Cambodia. It's quite robust. I think it's one of the perhaps the most robust economy in the post-COVID-19. But still, we need to address many challenges, especially productivity, competitiveness through digital transformation, human capital development, and infrastructure development, and deepen international integrations.
Earlier, you mentioned about the pressure to choose sides as a small state itself, and it is not very easy to impress everyone. So, in your opinion, what should Cambodia do, or how can Cambodia stay out of these obstacles amidst the growing tension between superpower in the region?
Oh, I think we need to stick to principle foreign policy, include promoting open, inclusive, multilateral system, include rule-based international order to promote respect of international law, especially the United Nations Charter. And in our region, we have ASEAN Charter and the Treaty of Amity Cooperation, which more than 40 countries now, I think, plus have become the signatories to the Treaty of Amity Cooperations. And then we need to further promote this dialogue, to give platform for dialogue, strategic dialogue and communication, because even though we have a lot of tensions, but as long as we're still talking to each other, it's still much better than not talking to each other. So dialogue really crucial to maintain this dialogue, channel communications. And at Cambodia, as a member of ASEAN and as a chair of ASEAN this year, have been working hard to provide this kind of a platform of dialogue, frank dialogue, candid dialogue. Agree to disagree, it's fine, you know, as long as you talk to each other. So that is something that Cambodia can do in order to navigate this kind of geopolitical bifurcation or fragmentations. And then we need to, I think it has been, have been very consistent that ASEAN centrality and unity are very crucial, because Cambodia alone cannot do much. But if we do collectively under the framework of ASEAN, then our leverage can be scaled up, you know, can be enhanced. So Cambodia need to work together with like-minded countries, especially Southeast Asian member states, to navigate together, to exercise our agencies at the national and international level. So agency is very important because it's a capacity of state, especially small state, to carry out independent foreign policy. And we need to be clear that nothing is more valuable than independence. And of course, strategic autonomy that can protect and defend the interests of small states. So those are the kind of key elements and principles that we need to adhere to. But at home, we need to continue building the capacity of our diplomats. And diplomats here do not refer to those who work at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. All of us can be diplomats to protect our national interests, to build our national prestige and image, so that we can further advance our national interests. So all of us are diplomats, and we need to build our capacity. But we need to understand who we are, our national interests and our national identity, who we are, where we at now, and where you want to go, where we want to go. We need to be clear, and we need to have a national consensus on this, where we're going together. So if we don't have shared worldview, understand a common destination, and we walk or talk differently or walk different way without having that national consensus and unity, perhaps that is the most dangerous things, national unity and consensus on foreign policy.
Yes, Dr. Vannarith, very insightful, and I agree with your point as well, that everyone can be a diplomat. And in terms of the opportunity, Doctor, what do you think Cambodia would gain from the great power rivalry in the region?
What Cambodia?
What are the opportunities that Cambodia can gain?
Well, there's some says that every crisis gives opportunities, but it depends on how you find opportunities within crisis. Competition is fine. It's even natural process, competition, especially between major power, status quo power and rising power. But confrontation is not good for small states and for the region and the world at large. So that is the message that we need to send it consistently clear to major powers, that competition is fine, but we wish you to have a healthy competition, and don't force us to choose sides. Even you force us to choose sides, we will not do it, so that must be clear. The message must be clear and consistent. The opportunities that we get is within this competitive world. If we can leapfrog in certain industry, for instance, such as digital economy or green economy, then I think we can be competitive. So need to be forward-looking. We have to have a medium and short-term, medium, long-term strategic visions. Otherwise, if we don't have this kind of a long-term vision, we will, get lost along the way, and we don't have a clear idea where we want to go. And if we don't have clear idea where you want to go, then you don't know how to explore opportunity along the way. So it means that you will be disrupted by the changes, external changes, so that you're not in control. So we need to always stay in control. Keep looking for opportunities stemming from these geopolitical competitions. For instance, when it comes to technology transfer when it comes to this kind of supply chains, kind of relocation of supply chains, offshoring, nearshoring, or friendshoring. Why we don't be a friendshoring to everyone? Of course, nearshoring, because we are next to two Asian giants, so nearshoring, friendshoring, so we are friend to everyone, so they can relocate their production base here in Cambodia. But again, as I said, we try to convince for investors to come to Cambodia. But if we still have high level of corruption, high level of irregularities, not reliable legal framework to protect the investors, then whatever we say outside, it will not have any impact, because once they come to Cambodia, they experience the real thing here in Cambodia, whether they feel comfortable to do business and feel safe to do business in Cambodia. Are they protected by the legal frameworks? So reforming at home and making friends abroad, which has become kind of a key foreign policy, kind of ideology of Cambodia foreign policy. So if you don't reform at home, you should not expect much to get from this kind of competitions. So that's why keep building a governance institution, keep building human capital and resources, build a clean, effective, and efficient state institution, public institution that really serve public's interests, that can attract foreign investment. So because economic security is national security, for Cambodia, I think that is the fact. Economics determine politics, economic security is national security. So we need to get more foreign direct investment, more know-how, technology to Cambodia.
Yes, Doctor. So it's more like we have to strengthen our domestic issues, domestic situation. We have to be more capacity in order to attract more investment inside the country. Besides this, usually most people, like I am an IELTS student, just like others too, they think that there are only two major powers within the region. But now there seems to have the emerging powers in the region, such as Japan. So what do you think of the what are the main objectives of their involvement in the Southeast Asia region? The emerging.
It's a natural process, and we should not aim to stop any country from rising. That is their legitimate rise and interest, you know. But the only thing we can do is how to create a regional environment that can facilitate international cooperation and interdependence. Because interdependence has been the cornerstone of peace and stability in this region for the past 7 decades or so. Because we do trade with each other, we invest with each other. So this kind of complex interdependence need to be further strengthened. And the rising, let's say, economic powers or comprehensive power and of the regional country in the Asia Pacific region is a plus to the region. If we have a mechanism to build trust and a mechanism to facilitate regional integration and cooperative security and so on. So it's fine. I think these kind of rising powers in Asia, because 21st century is the century of Asia, the Asia Pacific. And this growing economic powerhouse in this region will contribute to that realization of the Asian century. And all of us will benefit from this, because I think Cambodia is also fortunate to be part of this dynamic and robust region in the world. And we will benefit more from this deepened regional integration. And I would like to stress the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership here. Japan has been one of the key actors as well. Of course, ASEAN is the leader of RCEP, but Japan, China, Korea, those are very active in promoting free trade, right? And this momentum need to be maintained so that all of us can benefit from rising Asia.
Yes, so another question, Dr. Vannarith. With the changing of regional power, do you think the current Cambodia's foreign policy is enough for Cambodia to pursue its interests?
Sorry, again, the question?
So with the changing of regional political power, like the rising power, Japan and other countries in the region, and what do you think of our foreign policy direction? Is it enough for Cambodia to pursue its interests, or should there be any reform on that?
Well, observing Cambodia foreign policy closely, omnidirectional engagement can be the characteristics. So omnidirectional engagement, I mean, it's defined in terms of building equi-proximity to all major powers in the region and also outside the region, as long as Cambodia finds it beneficial to build those partnership and engagement. And diversification strategy have been kind of in full swing over the past, let's say, 5 years or so, especially the free trade agreement that Cambodia later on with Korea, and exploring more FTA partners with potential trading partners in the region and outside the region. So those are the strategy that have been implemented so far, and I think it will continue to do so. The omnidirectional engagement, diversification strategy, and strategic hedging. Strategic hedging means that Cambodia is not willing or has no interest in putting all eggs into one basket, because during times of uncertainty, people at individual level and organizational level, at the national level, international level, tend to hedge, because it's again, it's kind of natural instinct for us to minimize risk through hedging strategy. So that will continue to be Cambodian foreign policy.
Speaking of hedging strategy, Dr. Some people might believe that hedging strategy might be best for Cambodia, and while other people believe that the non-alignment strategy might be better. So what is your take on that? Do you think what kind of foreign policy strategy that Cambodia should adopt to advance its benefit without undermining her national interest?
No, hedging strategy and non-aligned movement are not usually exclusive. It complements each other. For small states, the non-aligned movement gives them a platform to exercise its agencies, and also to increase their bargaining power at the global level. So non-aligned movement, if you look at the history, it was formed at the peak of the Cold War, and the intention is not to choose sides between the two blocks, the US-led and the Soviet Union-led blocks. So that is the characteristic of the nature of the non-aligned movement. So the hedging strategy being implemented by Cambodia also, how to say, to revitalize and to reinforce the non-aligned movement. So because strategic hedging, you need to have more options and you need to have more platforms, and the non-aligned movement gives small states critical platform, and we call it political diplomatic capital to exercise the agencies. So that would complement each other, and hedging and non-aligned movement usually reinforcing the agencies of small states.
And moving back to the middle powers and the rising power, what are the roles of the middle powers or rising powers in the region? And would it shape the Cambodia's foreign policy in the future?
Yeah, we don't have a standard definition on middle power. How do we define them? It depends on their national role perceptions and their power asymmetry or power relations with their neighbors. Right? So, for instance, in Southeast Asia, maybe we can regard Indonesia's middle power, right, in terms of its size and so on. And of course, the middle power tend to focus more on economic interests, cultural identity interests, rather than military security interests. So on the security, military, middle power do not have much resources or interest in advancing those agenda, but it's more focused on economic interests, right? So this middle power again give more options to small states like Cambodia, and it also help build this dynamic strategic equilibrium in the Asia Pacific regions. In other words, the more actors, the better for small state to hedge. The more options, the better for small state to hedge. So we should welcome the rising middle powers, more middle powers to rise in the Asia Pacific regions, and coalition of small states as well. Those kind of sub-regional mechanism like Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam triangle, or the Mekong mechanism, a lot of Mekong initiative. So sub-regional mechanism can give options for small state, give platform for small state. So the more option, the more actor, the better for small state.
Yes, I agree with that too. And before we believe that there are two major superpowers in the region, and the tension can be flare up at any time. And now we have the emerging powers. So my question would be, would the presence of the emerging power would ease or reduce the tension among the superpowers in the region, or would their presence would flare up a higher tension among them?
These middle powers and emerging kind of actors in the region need to avoid bloc politics, meaning that you join exclusive club against another country. So this kind of bloc politics, exclusive alliance system can be dangerous. That's why we stress the word openness and inclusiveness. And this is the Cambodia foreign policy interest, and also ASEAN. We don't wish to see exclusive club or exclusive unilateral economic or security mechanism that can create or further build geopolitical wars in the Asia Pacific regions. You know, geopolitical wars is very dangerous because it will destroy the fundamental kind of foundation of peace and stability, which I mentioned earlier: interdependence and interconnectedness. These are the foundation of peace and stability. The more we interdependent on each other, the less conflicts or war could occur. Because it's no reason for me to wage war against another country that we do trade and investment, you know, that we all benefit from the bilateral relationship. Of course, we need to understand the risk of sleepwalkings too. So look at the experience of World War I. Many is sleepwalking, even though they pretty much have economic interdependence on each other, but they still wage war. because some leaders pursue extreme, this kind of nationalist policy, or a zero-sum game, or sleepwalking, or miscalculation, and so on. So that is the risk we need to be aware of. But our narrative should be interdependence, not fragmentation.
Yes, Doctor. So earlier we believe that the more actors in the region, the better the peace and stability is in the region. So in terms of the problems, although there can be the rise of more actors in the region, will there be any problems that Cambodia is facing in the changing of political power in the region?
Well, it is dynamic power transformation all along. It's a natural process. It's a structural issue. The rise and fall of empires historically is a common phenomenon. No empire can last forever. Right? It's always have a certain points in time it collapsed, and other powers empire emerged. So historically speaking, we look at the trend, the rise and fall of empires is quite common. It's a natural phenomenon. So dynamic changes of power in the region is it's a natural process, and Cambodia need to adapt all the time. So adapting capacity very important. It's like climate change, Now you imagine how you can adapt to climate change and how you can adapt to geopolitical change. So that is a basic skill, survival skill for small state. Adaptations to geopolitical change, to geoeconomic change. Right? If you can't adapt quick enough, then you would fail. So it depends on your adaptation capacity of your leadership and the capacity of the people. It's not only the capacity of the leader, but also the capacity of the people, because we need a whole of society, a whole of government approach to adapt to changes. And we need to be innovative all the time. Cannot take things for granted. We need to earn it. Cannot take peace for granted. We need to earn it. Right? So within this changing dynamics, regional dynamics, we need to at least have different scenario and strategic foresight, so that it will help us to prepare for uncertain future. So scenario 1 to 5, for instance, okay, this is scenario 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So any scenario, we are prepared for that. From worst case scenario to the best case scenario, for instance. Because we can't really predict the future, actually. And no one can do it. Because a lot of disruption, a lot of volatilities and fluidities, uncertainty. So indeed, it's very hard to predict, but we need to prepare for different scenarios. So that is scenario planning capacity, strategic foresight are very critical for Cambodia to adapt to the changes and also to grab opportunity from changes.
Then what about the Cambodian foreign policy or Cambodia as a whole? Since we are a small state, do you think Cambodia is ready for the changes? And is our foreign policy flexible enough for that?
Change, or either you change or you die. That is a simple fact. You need to keep changing all the time, adapting all the time. That is the bottom line. There's no other better alternative than reform, change, and adapt, transform. Whether Cambodia is flexible enough, well, it's hard to measure. but over the past 5 years or so, we can see a very dynamic and flexible foreign policy. Especially look at the chairmanship of ASEAN this year, we can see a high degree of flexibility and pragmatism of Cambodian foreign policy. I hope it will continue, but I don't know because the future is uncertain. But if Cambodia can continue on this track, on being flexible, pragmatic, and try to balance the interests of all partners and harmonize national interests with regional interests. Of course, when foreign policy, you prioritize your national interests, but it doesn't mean that you need to hurt other interests, especially ASEAN interests or common interests, but rather to connect your interests, harmonize your interests with the regional interests. Because Cambodia cannot be detached from the region. We are part of the region. So the success of ASEAN is success of Cambodia, and the success of Cambodia is success of ASEAN, because our destiny increasingly connected with these regional organizations. So that's why ASEAN has been regarded as the cornerstone. It's not just a cornerstone, but the cornerstone of Cambodian foreign policy. That's why we keep advancing international integration, regional multilateral institution, and rule-based international order. And ASEAN can be an anchor of promoting this rule-based international order.
Thank you, Dr. Vannarith, for your insights. And if we take a look at the Cambodian foreign policy direction, we can see that, like what you mentioned, Cambodia has been trying to promote the neutrality, interdependence, cooperation, and others. However, some experts and scholars tend to believe that Cambodia is more into China rather than the US. So what is your take on that? And does Cambodia really act in contrast with its own foreign policy direction?
Well, those observations also have its rational or logic, because it's very hard to have 50-50 kind of love or friendship toward these two competing powers. But at least, okay, let's say 60-40, yeah, but or 70-30 worst case scenario, but it doesn't mean that 100-0, right? So 100-0, it means the bandwagoning or taking sides already. But hedging is very difficult for any country to have, let's say 50-50. But if we can maintain 60-40, that is good already, you know, in our external relation with competing major powers. So we still get benefit from all sides. But it doesn't mean that Cambodia have put all the eggs into, let's say, China basket. It would be a misinterpretation or misunderstanding of Cambodian foreign policy behavior. And if some country try to look Cambodia from China angle or use China factor to define their bilateral relationship with Cambodia, that's also a big mistake, because it means they don't understand Cambodia foreign policy and the worldview of Cambodia and the national interest of Cambodia, right? So that is something that I think some countries and powers need to understand the underlying objectives and interests of Cambodia foreign policy, so that they can develop a more effective approach toward Cambodia. But the basic knowledge they should understand Cambodia is that Cambodia is independent country. Cambodia following diversification strategy, implementing strategic hedging, and valuing open, inclusive multilateralism and rule-based international order. So this is the basic knowledge. Okay, you understand Cambodia, it's the basic knowledge on Cambodia foreign policy. And then you design your policy or engagement strategy with Cambodia.
So my last question would be, now Cambodia is the chairman of ASEAN, and how does the Cambodian foreign policy matter to superpowers or emerging powers in the region?
Well, the chairmanship of ASEAN can be an optics of Cambodian foreign policy. You can perhaps it's a good time to understand Cambodian policy through this chairmanship, 1 year chairmanship. Look at the behavior, foreign policy behavior, objective and interest. So far, Cambodia trying to accommodate every countries and try to harmonize and synergize this kind of various initiative and interests, either ASEAN member states or dialogue partner ASEAN, because Cambodia, you know, as a chair, have this kind of responsibility and duty. As a responsible and active member of these regional groupings, you need to show leadership. It's not only just a gatekeeper, because ASEAN centrality is not just convening power and the power to set agenda, but the capacity to shape and deliver outcomes, and the capacity to lead conceptually. Conceptual leadership is very important. Small state, we don't have material resources. What we have is normative power, ideational power. If we can initiate regional or global ideas or concepts that can make a difference, so that is the strength of small states. That's why I'm very looking forward to see the first ASEAN Green Deal, which is proposed by Cambodia this year. I want to see the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Secretariat to be based in Cambodia, so that Cambodia can play more active role in promoting international trade, free trade, and perhaps also fair trade in the regions, and also the green economy and green trade. I want to see Cambodia to advance and concretize this women peace security agenda, which are already one of the priorities of Cambodia chairmanship ASEAN. Of course, the ASEAN Defense Minister meeting already adopted the concept paper on strengthening the support mechanism for women peacekeepers. So Cambodia should be proud of this because as a post-conflict country, Cambodia has sent, I think, more than 7,000 peacekeepers, and among which women peacekeeper kind of a quite relatively significant number of women peacekeepers. So in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, I think Cambodia are kind of the top two in terms of women peacekeeping forces. So this kind of concept of actual contribution to the region and the world, this is the only tools for small state like Cambodia have. We don't have much material resources, right? Small states are constrained by resources. So that is the fact. But we don't lack ideas. We can contribute to the region and the world through idea, concepts. So the chairmanship of ASEAN have proven that conceptual leadership of Cambodia in the region.
So thank you so much, Dr. Vannarith, for your insights. And I also believe that our participants will get something from the discussion today. And it's been almost 1 hour already for our discussion. And therefore, I would like to open the floor for the Q&A session. And if anyone has any question, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. And in the meantime, Dr. Vannarith, I have another question. So it is out of my curiosity as an IELTS student as well. You also mentioned something in the context of Mekong sub-region. So if we take a look at the Mekong sub-region, there is also the presence of superpowers such as the US and China. And we can also see Japan as an emerging power who actively involved in the Mekong sub-region as well. So beside these three states, are there any other emerging powers that play their role in the Mekong sub-region, and what are their objectives?
Well, there are other actors in the Mekong, India, India, Korea, right, very active, and Australia also start to have more active engagement in the Mekong, the European Union, right? So there's a number of actors that interested in the Mekong regions. Of course, the three main actors here: China, Japan, and the United States, which have both geo-economic and geopolitical interests, especially China and the United States. Of course, it creates a dynamics of competitions in the region, but the Mekong regions, because all the members of ASEAN, they have this view of building synergies and complementarities of those initiatives, and they always send the message to certain power that don't use it as a platform to against any third country. We are not interested in this joining a coalition alliance against a third country, because we remain open region, inclusive region. So please come to this region to develop and have a constructive partnership and collaboration and synergies. As I said earlier, competition is not necessarily bad. Competition is good, but as long as a healthy competition, a competition that still cooperate on certain issues for mutual benefits. So the Mekong country and the Mekong region as a whole is a growth center, as well as a strategic frontier of the Asia-Pacific regions. And this region, really look at the geography, really connecting the two oceans, the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. And we talk about the concept of Indo-Pacific, it's about the confluence of the two oceans. And you look at the confluence of two oceans, the Mekong region, connecting both maritime and mainland Asia-Pacific. So it's very critical. Look at the geographic factor and the locations of the Mekong. So Cambodia is part of this Mekong region, and I think opportunities arising from these dynamic regions, and the involvement of these major middle powers will contribute to the dynamism of the Mekong regions. So I think I see it as more of opportunity than a threat when it comes to a major power engagement and competition in the Mekong region. And Cambodia can have more opportunities to develop its economy through this engagement, multi actor engagement or omnidirectional engagement.
Yes. So earlier I was about to ask, because Cambodia is one of the parent state, Mekong the parent state, and I was about to ask what are the interests that Cambodia could get from that, but you already answered in advance. So I think our special conversation can come to an end now. And on behalf of the TYS, I would like to show our sincere appreciation to Dr. Vannarith for spending your valuable time on the weekend in joining us this morning. And